Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. He is called a king, but he walks with the weight of a galaxy on his shoulders. The silent king Sarek, last of the Triarch, ruler of a race older than stars, once broker of pacts with gods and now the architect of a long-delayed resurrection, does not fear easily. He has witnessed the death of sons, the betrayal of divine beings, and the slow decay of eternity. Yet in the dark between the stars, there is something that stirs even him. It is not the madness of the warp or the endless shrieking of demons that unnerves him. No, the thing that claws at his immortal thoughts is silent. It speaks no tongue. It burns no offerings. It promises no temptation. It simply devours, perfectly, completely, eternally. The Tyranids are not a mere Xenos threat to be catalogued and annihilated. They are an anomaly in the natural order, an intrusion from some unknowable darkness beyond the veil of the known cosmos. The Silent King has seen them, he has faced them. And in their hunger, he saw not chaos, not war, but an ending. An end not just to life, but to complexity, to history, to meaning itself. That is why the Silent King fears them. Because for the first time since his betrayal of the Tan, he has no answer. No strategy. Only a cold, creeping realization. The Tyranids are not a threat to the galaxy. They are the galaxy's executioners. When Sarek returned to the galaxy after his self-imposed exile beyond the intergalactic void, he expected to find a war-torn imperium, broken and ripe for conquest. He believed the galaxy would be a chessboard of dying empires and decaying species, a landscape ready for the Necron reclamation. What he did not anticipate was the crawling horror that greeted him at the galactic fringe. A vast, endless swarm, consuming everything, leaving nothing. He had ventured into the dark, hoping to find clarity. Instead, he found the Tyranids. The encounter was more than a battle. It was a revelation. At first, the Silent King saw them as just another enemy. Powerful, yes, but ultimately containable. But as his Pharaon escort was torn apart by chitin and claws, as his indomitable constructs were dissolved in acid and consumed by adaptive nightmares, Sarek realized this was something different. This was not an enemy to defeat. It was an inevitability. These creatures did not merely wage war, they eradicated. They learned. They evolved. Every victory made them stronger. Every defeat taught them something new. Where the Catan had betrayed out of pride and chaos corrupted through weakness, the Tyranids simply came, devoured, and left nothing behind. He returned not with triumph, but with warning. To the Necron dynasties scattered across tomb worlds he brought urgent decrees. Reawaken, mobilize. The great devourer is coming, and unlike the petty squabbles of the galaxy's sentient races, this was a threat that could not be negotiated with, reasoned with, or feared into submission. Even as he reasserted his command over splintered Necron legions, his words carried the chill of something darker. The knowledge that if the galaxy does not unite, if even the Necrons cannot adapt, there will be no more galaxy to rule. What changed in him during those silent moments in the void is unknowable. But his actions speak volumes. His ancient pride now carries an edge of desperation. He allies, however reluctantly, with lesser beings. He allows diplomacy where once there was only domination. Not out of mercy, not out of weakness, but because the Tyranids are not an enemy that fits the old patterns of galactic conflict. They are the antithesis of civilization, a biological entropy sweeping across the stars. And Sarek knows, more deeply than any other being in the galaxy, that if even one hive fleet reaches critical mass, it will not be chaos that brings the final night. It will be the swarm. When Sarek first beheld the mind behind the Tyranids, the Hive Mind, it was not a being in the traditional sense. It was a pressure, an intelligence so vast and alien it could not be understood, only endured. Unlike chaos, which speaks in dreams and promises, the Hive Mind offered nothing. It simply imposed its will. The Silent King, who had once outwitted gods, felt for the first time what it meant to be prey. This was not a creature of ideology or hatred. It had no morality, no malice, no ego. It simply existed to consume, to perfect its form, and to spread. That is what truly terrified him, its purity. Chaos is impure, fractured by contradiction and self-destruction. The Hive Mind is singular, unified, inescapable. That moment of contact, brief, painful, undeniable, shook Sarek to his metallic core. He knew then that the Tyranids were not merely invaders, they were the heralds of a truth too terrible for most beings to comprehend. In the face of this devouring unity, the divided galaxy would fall. And the Silent King, for all his power and foresight, saw only one future: a galaxy stripped of identity, memory, and legacy, with nothing left but a hunger that could never be satisfied. This was no longer about reclaiming the Necron Empire. It was about denying extinction. And for the first time in millions of years, the Silent King's voice, ancient, commanding, absolute, trembled, not with anger, but with fear. To understand why the Silent King dreads the Tyranids more than the gods of the warp, we must first step inside the mind of a Necron, a being of pure logic, stripped of emotion, yet still haunted by echoes of mortality. For the Necrons, fear is not a panic response. It is not irrational. It is a calculated recognition of existential threat. The fear the Silent King experiences is not the trembling fear of a mortal, but the cold, clinical understanding that something exists which cannot be stopped, reasoned with, or outlasted. And for a species that prides itself on timelessness, that is a terror beyond comprehension. The Necrons once conquered death itself. They traded their souls for eternal life, becoming machines of living metal with minds forged in logic and crystalline thought. In doing so, they shed most of the frailties of biological life: emotion, passion, irrationality. And yet, within Sarek, something endured. A memory perhaps of mortality, of consequences. And it is through this lens that the Tyranids become the embodiment of ultimate threat. The Necrons see in the Tyranids not just another enemy, but a systemic extinction event, one that no amount of patience, technological superiority, or temporal advantage can withstand indefinitely. Necron philosophy revolves around order, stasis, and control. Their wars are not driven by conquest for its own sake, but by restoration, a desire to return the galaxy to the height of Necron-Tyre civilization. Every tomb world reawakens with precise purpose. Every campaign is measured. In this context, the Tyranids are chaos incarnate, not in the warp sense, but in the disruption they bring to the Necron's cosmic equation. Tyranids break patterns. They don't follow predictable battle doctrines. They learn. They adapt. Their evolution is real-time, biological, and terrifying. Against this, the Necron strength of ancient tradition becomes a weakness. What makes the Tyranids so dangerous to a race like the Necrons is their disinterest. They do not hate the Necrons. They do not fear them. They don't even really perceive them as anything other than another set of resources: metal, biomass, knowledge. This lack of ideological or emotional motivation renders them incorruptible and undistracted. Where chaos thrives on temptation and psychic influence, the Tyranids care nothing for such things, and that makes them harder to predict. More alien, more terrifying. In Necron logic, every problem has a solution, given enough time. But the Tyranids erode that fundamental belief. They are an algorithm that changes its own code. They are a plague that resists all containment. They are, in a very real way, evolution weaponized. And worse, they are not local. They come from the void beyond the galaxy. They are not bound by the cycles of galactic history or the balance of warp and real space. They are the ultimate foreign body, invading the very fabric of existence. Sarek's fear is also tied to the Necrons' long game. Their entire race slumbers beneath the surface of a million worlds, waiting to reawaken and reclaim. But every world the Tyranids touch is defiled, not just destroyed, but consumed to the molecular level. Once a planet is stripped, there is nothing left to reclaim. No resources, no bioforms, no opportunity to restore the Necron-Tyre race. In essence, every Tyranid invasion is a permanent loss in a game the Necrons cannot afford to lose. Even the Necron mastery over death is meaningless against the Tyranids. Resurrection protocols are useless when the enemy consumes not only bodies but data, memory, and infrastructure. There is a finality to the Tyranid threat that bypasses all Necron defenses. They are not spiritual. They are not ideological. They are the devourers of possibility. The Silent King, in all his wisdom, sees this. He understands that chaos may ravage the galaxy, but it still leaves something behind. Worshippers, ruins, psychic echoes. The Tyranids leave only emptiness. And perhaps the most terrifying realization of all, from Sarek's perspective, is that the Tyranids resemble what the Necrons once were. A force of pure will, unhindered by morality or compromise, sweeping across the stars. But where the Necrons sought control, the Tyranids bring oblivion. They are not a rival empire or a chaotic infection. They are entropy given flesh. And for a species that sold its soul to escape death, there is no greater fear than a thing that devours even undeath. In the cold calculus of Necron logic, the Tyranids are the final variable, the one that makes all equations collapse. The Silent King does not fear because he is weak. He fears because he understands. And understanding the Tyranids means realizing that one day, even the stars will go dark, and nothing will remain but the endless, chittering silence of hunger. The Tyranids are more than just another Xenos threat. They are an aberration, a blasphemy against the natural order, not because of what they believe, but because they believe in nothing. From the Necron perspective, they are a terrifying anti-ideology. Pure, consuming biology without purpose or morality. And that, paradoxically, makes them far more horrifying than the daemons of the warp, who at least operate within some recognizable system of thought, however twisted. The Great Devourer does not seek domination, corruption, or even annihilation. It seeks assimilation, digestion, total reduction. To face the Tyranids is to face an enemy that is not malevolent but utterly indifferent. In the warp, the gods of chaos reign. They are beings of immense, terrifying power, yes, but they are ultimately shackled to the sentient minds of the galaxy. They are created and sustained by emotion, rage, lust, ambition, despair. The Necrons, being soulless and non-psychic, exist outside this ecosystem. They can fight the demons of chaos and, more importantly, they can ignore them. Necron weapons are made of materials impervious to sorcery. Their minds cannot be possessed. Their tombs lie dormant and silent, inaccessible to the whispers of the warp. While chaos is a nightmare to the living, it is a fading shadow to the Necron. But the Tyranids? They are real. They are flesh and bone and claw and acid. They exist in real space and wage war on the material world. There is no ethereal plane in which to hide, no protective barrier of soullessness. The Hive Mind does not need to corrupt the Necrons. It simply tears through them. Its organisms adapt to the unnatural strengths of living metal. Gaunts become acidic enough to corrode necrodermis. Warriors develop the speed to dodge Gauss blasts. Lictors evolve the silence necessary to infiltrate tomb complexes. Every encounter makes them stronger. And worst of all, the Hive Mind learns at a scale and speed that defies Necron calculation. Where chaos festers in the corners of broken minds, the Tyranids operate as a single perfect thought. A will that is not scattered among pantheons or avatars, but unified, focused, absolute. The Hive Mind stretches across light years, coordinating billions of organisms as one. From the Necron point of view, this is not just dangerous, it is familiar. It is a mirror of their own gestalt intelligence, the command and control structure of overlords in cryptex directing legions of warriors. But where the Necrons operate through command protocols and hierarchy, the Tyranids are biological instinct fused with psychic direction. There is no infrastructure to destroy, no leadership to assassinate. Cut off a head and another forms. Burn a swarm, and its memory becomes a new weapon. The warp may be a place of madness, but it is also bounded by its own contradictions. Daemons can be banished. Chaos incursions can collapse under their own instability. But the Tyranids do not collapse. They do not splinter. They are not vulnerable to civil war or corruption. Their hunger is stable. Their purpose is fixed. They are, in a terrifying sense, more orderly than even the Imperium, more efficient than the Necrons. The Tyranids are entropy in its most structured, unstoppable form. And while chaos depends on the sentient races to exist, the Tyranids require only biomass. Any biomass. Necron worlds that once lay beneath vibrant ecosystems are now targets simply because they orbit stars. It does not matter if the surface is dead. A single trace of biomass, a single underground storage of preserved DNA is enough to draw the swarm. There is no sanctuary. Even the Necron mastery of matter and anti-life technologies cannot hide them. Tyranid probes can sense warmth, motion, electromagnetic signatures, and even patterns of tectonic disturbance. Where chaos whispers, the Tyranids listen. And then they come. It is this inevitability that terrifies the Silent King. Not just that the Tyranids exist, but that they cannot be bargained with, distracted, or satiated. There is no equilibrium with the swarm. Every delay is temporary. Every victory only slows the inevitable. A world defended is merely a postponement of its consumption. The Necrons, who once believed in the power of time and patience, now face an enemy that does not wait. The the Tyranids are urgency made manifest. Even the most powerful Necron dynasties have fallen silent after encounters with Hive fleets. Some tomb worlds now lie half-submerged in biocorruption, their monolithic ziggurats overgrown with Tyranid mold, their stasis chambers violated by tendrils seeking flesh that no longer breathes. And still the swarm moves forward. So when the Silent King speaks of the Tyranids, his words are not laced with hatred. They are cold, distant, and laced with a rare tone among his kind, reverence. Not admiration, but the grim respect of one apex predator recognizing another, more perfect one. It is not the daemons of the warp that will end the Necrons. It is the great devourer. And Sarek knows it. The warp is a nightmare realm of fire and madness, but it is a familiar one. For all its horrors, it follows certain patterns, certain mythic rhythms. The Chaos Gods wage endless war not just upon real space, but upon each other. Their power is vast but scattered. Each one embodies a singular emotion, taken to its most grotesque extreme: rage, change, decay, lust, and is therefore limited by that very identity. The Necrons, particularly the Silent King, have observed these patterns across millennia. They understand how the warp bleeds into real space, how it can be stemmed, redirected, manipulated, even exploited. But the Tyranids? They offer no such comfort. They are not a storm of emotions. They are the void of them. What sets the Tyranids apart in the cold calculus of Necron logic is their total independence from the metaphysical fabric of the galaxy. Chaos is tied to the warp. Its gods require souls. Its daemons need the psychic emissions of sentient beings to exist. Remove those emissions, and the warp gods weaken. Remove the living, and chaos starves. But the Tyranids are not bound to that system. They require only the building blocks of matter. They do not need souls, dreams, or emotions. They need protein, carbon, genetic material, anything alive, anything that once was alive, even in the most basic microbial form, becomes a feast. Chaos can be locked behind Gellar fields. The Tyranids cannot be locked out. They will chew through the hull. Necron anti-warp technology is incredibly advanced. Dolmen gates allow them to traverse the webway without touching the immaterium. Their stasis protocols resist temporal flux. Their minds are invulnerable to corruption. Chaos sees them as annoying insects, impossible to corrupt, difficult to bait, unresponsive to temptation. But in this immunity lies a paradox. Because they are immune, the Necrons do not fear chaos. They fight it, they despise it, but they do not dread it. There is no true existential threat from chaos to the Necron race as a whole. But the Tyranids circumvent all protections. Gauss weapons, which atomize matter on a molecular level, are often insufficient against the endless tide. Warriors run out of energy, generators overload, reanimation protocols reach their limits, and even when a battle is won, the Hive Mind records every second, adapting and preparing. The next swarm will be immune to whatever strategy was used before. There is no technological superiority that lasts more than a campaign or two. In a war of attrition, the Tyranids always win, not because they are stronger, but because they never stop changing. The Silent King is a master strategist. In the War in Heaven, he watched empires fall, stars shatter, gods die. He is not unfamiliar with extinction-level events. But the Citan, for all their godlike power, were beings with limits, bound by physics, emotion, pride. They could be deceived, fragmented, enslaved. Chaos, for all its malevolence, is chaotic, self-defeating, splintered by its own contradictions. The Tyranids, by contrast, are perfect, unified, singular in purpose. They do not splinter, they do not hesitate, they do not retreat in fear or shame. When defeated, they retreat only to evolve. This terrifies Sarek because it upends every principle of warfare he understands. There is no morale to break, no center to strike, no god to kill. The Hive Mind is not a tyrant, not even a mind in the way mortals understand it. It is instinct made conscious. It is evolution weaponized into thought. The Necron's usual tactics, decapitation strikes, surgical annihilation, disintegration of command structures, do not work. There is no head. The Tyranids are legion, and yet they are one. Worse still, the Tyranids are efficient. Where chaos leaves ruin, the Tyranids clean up. A planet infested by demons can eventually be reclaimed, exorcised, fortified. But a planet consumed by the Tyranids is a lifeless husk. Not just burned, stripped, oceans drained, atmosphere siphoned, crust ground into nutrients. Even the gravity wells can be destabilized. It's not just conquest, it's subtraction. For the Necrons, whose entire civilization relies on the ability to return, to reclaim, to restore, this is anathema. Their tomb worlds are sacred repositories of history and potential. But if even one Tyranid hive fleet reaches critical mass in the galactic core, hundreds of tomb worlds could be lost forever. Their occupants will not die gloriously. They will simply be eaten in their sleep, their souls already long since bartered away, leaving nothing but dust. That kind of finality is something the Silent King has never faced before. Even in the war in heaven, there was survival. Even after betraying the Titan, there was purpose. But the Tyranids offer no future, no myth, no afterlife, just consumption. They are the negation of hope, of history, of legacy. And for a race that traded its mortality for eternity, the irony could not be more bitter. Eternity devoured. So when Sarek moves his fleets, when he deploys legions and awakens silent allies, it is not to conquer, it is to preserve. Not just the Necron race, but the very idea of galactic continuity. He does not fear the warp. He fears a future where nothing remembers the past, a future with no past, a galaxy scrubbed clean of meaning by the endless hunger of the void. The Citan were the first true nightmare the Necrontire ever faced. Star gods of living energy, they promised deliverance from death and gifted the Necrons immortality, at the cost of their souls. The Silent King orchestrated the pact that transformed his race into deathless machines, and he has borne the weight of that betrayal ever since. When the Citan revealed their true nature, Sarek led a rebellion, shattered the gods into shards, and imprisoned them. But the memory of those beings, how they consumed suns and devoured entire worlds, remains etched in the Necron psyche. The Tyranids, when first encountered, awakened that ancient dread. Because in them, Sarek saw something horribly familiar. The Catan were predators of energy and consciousness. They fed upon the essence of living things, transcending biology itself. The Tyranids, in contrast, are biological. They operate through digestion, absorption, and assimilation. But the result is the same, complete erasure. The Citan consumed souls, the Tyranids consume matter. The difference lies not in outcome, but in method. For the Silent King, the resemblance is too close to ignore. The Tyranids are the new Catan, but without vanity, without desire, without weakness. This is the paradox that haunts Sarek. He fought a war to free his people from gods who devoured them. Now he returns to find a new devourer, one that cannot be shattered, imprisoned, or divided. The Titan were powerful, but their power was finite. It could be calculated, measured, exploited. The Tyranids, by contrast, grow stronger with every meal. Every battle lost to them is a lesson they never forget. Where the Citan demanded worship and twisted the minds of their followers, the Tyranids demand nothing, they simply take. It is this absence of ego that makes them more terrifying. The Tannin could be manipulated. They had personalities, flaws, rivalries. They could be turned against each other. The Tyranids have no such internal division. They do not dream. They do not plot. They simply move forward, swarm by swarm, guided by a mind that may not even reside within the galaxy. The Silent King once shattered gods with cunning and sacrifice. But how do you shatter hunger? The Hive Mind is not just a threat to material survival, it is a spiritual annihilation. Not in the warp sense, but in the sense that it makes belief irrelevant. There is no resisting its ideology because it has none. There is no heresy, no conversion, no cult. Only the raw, crushing will to consume and become more. Against chaos, the Necrons can marshal their indifference as a shield. But against the Hive Mind, indifference is a liability. The Tyranids do not need you to feel fear. They only need you to exist long enough to be consumed. Sarek's worst fear is not that the Tyranids will destroy the galaxy. It is that they will perfect it in their image. A galaxy devoid of individuality, a seamless, living machine of consumption. The Tyranids are, in a twisted way, what the Necrons aspired to be, eternal, unified, unstoppable. But where the Necrons sought to impose order through intellect and technology, the Tyranids do so through instinct and biology. It is a mirror that mocks the Silent King. What if, in trying to escape death, he created a world vulnerable to a far worse fate? Endless digestion? And so the Citan paradox becomes clearer. The Necrons betrayed their gods to preserve their autonomy. But now they face a godless force that does not enslave, but erases. A force that does not tempt, but absorbs. The Citan ruled with cruelty, but they allowed their slaves to dream of rebellion. The Tyranids offer no such dream. Their victims are not dominated. They are broken down into their base components, and their memories, their cultures, their dreams all become biomass. That is not just death, that is undoing. For Sarek, who carries the weight of his people's damnation, the emergence of the Tyranids is a cruel cosmic joke. He outlived the star gods, buried his guilt in exile, only to return and find their echo writ in flesh. He fears the Tyranids more than the Tan because he cannot defeat them the same way. There is no pact to make, no prison to build, no war of deception to wage. The Satan could be undone by betrayal. The Tyranids cannot be betrayed. They have no trust to break. In the end, the Tyranids are worse than the gods of old because they offer no lesson. The Catan were a warning against hubris. The Tyranids are the end of all stories, a devouring tide with no memory, no remorse, and no reason to stop. And for a king who once ruled eternity, that is the only fate worth fearing. There's a tragedy woven deep into the Necron race. A tragedy made all the more agonizing by what they once were: brilliant, proud, and fatally flawed. The Necron civilization before their transformation was defined by its suffering. Their bodies aged rapidly under the cruel light of their star, and in that pain, they sought deliverance. What they found was the Tan. What they chose was biotransference. And what they became was unlife. The Silent King bears that shame like a Toonworld crown. He made the decision that saved his people from death, but damned them to an eternal, soulless existence. And now across the stars, Sarek sees the Tyranids. Beings who, in their own way, have perfected the very process he once initiated. They consume the living and make them something new. They break organisms down and rebuild them into the most efficient forms possible. And they do it without soul, without remorse, without hesitation. This is what haunts Sarek more than anything. The realization that the Tyranids are, in essence, a biological echo of the Necron's own descent into oblivion. The Necrons sacrificed identity for strength, freedom for uniformity, and life for durability. The Tyranids are the final evolution of that principle. But where the Necrons retain some semblance of mind, a fractured, bitter consciousness that remembers what was lost, the Tyranids carry no such burden. They are what the Necrons aspired to become. A unified force, unhindered by emotion or dissent, perfectly adapted to a singular goal. And yet, the Tyranids are superior. That is the unbearable truth. While Necron technology is ancient and incomprehensibly advanced, it is stagnant. It is perfected, yes, but static. The Necrons do not innovate, they maintain, they remember. The Tyranids, by contrast, are in a state of perpetual refinement. They learn, they change. Every engagement is an opportunity for improvement. What Sarek sees in them is not just a rival, he sees a successor. A vision of what the Necrons could have become had they fused biological adaptability with unity of purpose. That mirror is not just disturbing, it's devastating. Because in the Tyranids, Sarek sees a race that made no mistake. They didn't trade their souls for immortality. They were never burdened by souls to begin with. They didn't lose their individuality, they never had it. Their purpose was never distorted by pride, ambition, or betrayal. They are evolution's answer to the Necron's ancient error, life made into machine, not by technology, but by instinct. A perfection achieved not through sacrifice, but through inevitability. This is the horror that turns Sarek's strategic mind inward. What if the Tyranids are the proof that the Necron transformation wasn't the ultimate solution, but a flawed prototype? What if the Tetan weren't the final gods, but merely the beginning of something worse? In trying to escape death, did the Necrons accidentally light a beacon for something far more perfect in its cruelty? The Silent King has walked through the aftermath of Tyranid assaults. He has seen tomb worlds cracked open like eggs, their occupants devoured before reactivation. He has watched scarabs chew their way through bioflesh, only to be overwhelmed and corrupted by mutating bacteria tailored by Tyranid biologists. He has listened, in silent agony, to the voices of his cryptechs as they reported that entire data vaults were lost, not to deletion, but to digestion. Information itself being unmade, knowledge erased, civilization rendered meaningless. To Sarek, a single hive fleet is not a foe. It is a reflection, a living monument to what he failed to achieve. Where he brought unlife to his people, the Tyranids bring something even more final, unbeing. They do not merely strip flesh, they strip identity. And where the Necrons are tormented by what they lost, the Tyranids carry no memory at all. They do not mourn, they do not remember. And that, to a race defined by memory, is the final, cruelest terror. In that sense, the Tyranids are the Necrons' shadow, the thing they might have become if their gamble had succeeded entirely. Not cursed machines bound by regret, but perfect organisms with no past to regret. The Silent King does not merely fear them because they are strong. He fears them because they have already become what he tried and failed to create. They are the conclusion of a nightmare that began with a prayer for immortality, and they are coming to end the story. The calculations of the Silent King are flawless. Every motion of his hand, every deployment of his legions, is the result of a mind that once orchestrated the dismantling of gods. He sees the galaxy not in moments or centuries, but in epochs. And within that vast timeline, Sarek has identified a singular point of failure, the Tyranids. Not because they are stronger than the Necrons in the immediate sense, though they are terrifyingly efficient, but because their continued existence renders all other strategies obsolete. From a purely strategic perspective, the Necrons were poised to retake the galaxy. The younger races were fractured and bloodied. The Imperium, bloated and overextended. The Eldari, ghosts clinging to ruins. Even the Orcs, for all their anarchic strength, lacked direction. In such a landscape, the Necrons could have risen again. Slowly, surely, tomb by tomb, they could have reasserted dominion. But all of that changes with the Tyranids. Because where the other factions squabble, the Hive Mind grows. It is silent, patient, and all-consuming. It does not falter. It does not sleep. It only calculates the next bite. Sarek's strategic genius compels him to act differently in the face of this threat. Unlike the overconfident Pharaons who see in the Tyranids just another Xenos swarm, the Silent King sees the pattern, and it's accelerating. Each Hive fleet is more potent than the last. The gaps between appearances grow shorter. And worst of all, the Hive Mind is learning how to counter not just Imperial defenses, but Necron technology. Gauss resistance is increasing. Synapse creatures are developing redundancies. Even reanimation protocols are being systematically disrupted by bioplasmic toxins designed through real-time analysis of Necron alloy properties. This isn't adaptation. It's evolution at the speed of desperation. The Silent King knows what comes next. If left unchecked, the Tyranids will consume not just worlds, but the very infrastructure required for galactic civilization to continue. They're not waging war for territory or resources in the traditional sense. They are erasing potential. A consumed world cannot be recolonized. A devoured biosphere cannot regrow. The Tyranids are not participating in the galactic game. They are flipping the board and melting the pieces. And once enough of the galaxy has been rendered inert, the Necron plan of restoration becomes irrelevant. You cannot rule over dust. You cannot rebuild from void. This is why Sarek, for all his pride and hatred of the younger races, has begun to consider temporary alliances, not from weakness, never that, but from necessity. Against chaos, the Necrons fight alone. Against orcs, they fight with contempt. But against the Tyranids, Sarek sees something more terrifying than defeat. Silence. Not the meditative silence of the tomb, the final, echoing silence of a galaxy without life. To preserve the Necron race, to even entertain the possibility of reclaiming their empire, the Tyranids must be halted. Not fought in single engagements, not delayed. Halted, eradicated. And the only way to do that, Sarek calculates, is through an unprecedented synthesis of force. His emissaries now appear in unlikely places, not with demands, but with offers. Brief ceasefires with the Adeptus Mechanicus, non-aggression pacts with certain Eldari corsairs, even whispered communiques with inquisitorial warbands who dare entertain the idea of fighting alongside a king of metal. Each alliance is temporary. Each one is tolerated only as long as it contributes to the larger solution. Sarek is no idealist. He does not believe in unity. He believes in probability. And the only timeline that ends with Necron ascendance, or survival for that matter, is the one in which the Tyranids are stopped before they cross a tipping point. A point beyond which the galactic biosphere collapses and the stars play to an empty audience. Even now, the Silent King monitors Hive fleet movements with obsessive precision. He dispatches shard lords to decoy regions, testing the Hive Mind's responsiveness. He sends cryptex to manipulate gravitational currents, diverting splinter fleets into dead zones. It is a cosmic game of chess, but every piece lost feeds the enemy. Every mistake is permanent. The Tyranids have no interest in winning. They only need to eat. And Sarek knows, better than anyone, that hunger is the most patient enemy of all. Chaos is dramatic. Its assaults are cataclysmic, its influence flamboyant, its servants drenched in madness and spectacle. Warp storms rend the stars, planets are transformed into living hells, daemons announce their arrival with fire and impossible geometry. But for all the fire and fury, the Silent King sees chaos as a tide that rises and falls. It comes in surges. It burns brightly and then it falters. Empires adapt, faiths rise to resist. The Necrons themselves are largely immune. They can wait it out as they have for millennia. But the Tyranids don't arrive with fanfare. There's no herald, no prophecy, no scream in the warp. They come with silence. The quiet before the storm is not a metaphor, it is literal. A system goes dark. Vox transmissions stop, astropaths scream and then vanish, biosignatures fade to nothing. When the Necrons investigate, they find husks. Worlds stripped not just of life, but of structure, of complexity. It is not ruin, it is sterilization. And that is the key difference. Chaos defiles, but Tyranids erase. Sarek has observed this carefully. From the depths of intergalactic space to the fringes of the Segmentum Ultima, Hive fleets emerge like tumors from the void. At first, the galaxy believed they were separate entities, Leviathan, Behemoth, Kraken. But the Silent King knows better. These are not factions, they are limbs. Every fleet is an extension of a single, incomprehensible mind. A mind that reaches, probes, tests, a mind that is learning faster than any Necron model can predict. This is what turns the cold fear in Sarek's chest into icy certainty. The Hive Mind is not just surviving, it is optimizing. Every dead world is a lesson. Every consumed foe becomes data. The Hive Mind is conducting experiments across the galaxy, using battlefields as laboratories. And the worst part? It's working. The Necrons, for all their technological superiority, are losing ground. Their tomb worlds are being preemptively targeted. Their deployment algorithms are being outmaneuvered. Hive ships are starting to resist even the most advanced dimensional weapons. When the Necrons lost their souls, they retained their intellects, their pride, their memory. They became cold and eternal, the perfect machines of war. But machines can only innovate when they are told to. Tyranids need no instruction. The Hive Mind rewrites itself mid-battle, and it's beginning to understand the Necrons. The Silent King has seen the data. Hive nodes intercepting Necron command signals. Gaunts ignoring pain thresholds to exploit weaknesses in canoptech constructs. Entire tomb complexes overwhelmed not by brute force, but by surgical strikes that mirror Necron war doctrine. Reflected back at them, faster and more fluid. The Tyranids are no longer just a swarm, they are beginning to mimic, and mimicry is the step before mastery. The Silent King no longer underestimates the Hive Mind. He does not even consider it merely biological anymore. It is post-biological, a meta-consciousness, an ecosystem that functions like software. Its organisms are not life forms, they are modular code that rewrites itself in real time to defeat whatever the galaxy throws at it. This is not just evolution. This is acceleration. Where chaos seeks domination through emotion, the Tyranids simply eliminate all variants. Their victory condition is not control, it is uniformity. They don't want the galaxy to kneel. They want it to vanish, to be reduced to chemical components for the next strain. And unlike chaos, which burns out, the Tyranids grow more efficient the more they eat. Their entropy is directional, focused, inevitable. That inevitability is what pierces Sarek's iron mind like a needle of pure dread. He remembers the war in heaven. He remembers the Tan. He knows what it's like to face something unstoppable. But even the Catan had limits. Even chaos is shaped by emotion. The Tyranids, they are shaped by necessity. They don't care how they win. They don't care who resists. They don't care if they are understood. And that makes them unbeatable in a way the Necrons cannot calculate. There is no endgame, no bargain, no corruption, no failure state. Just hunger, moving, learning, adapting. In a galaxy full of fire and madness, it is the coldest force of all that threatens to extinguish everything. Sarek doesn't just see the future the Tyranids will create. He sees the one they will prevent. A future of empires rising, of balance slowly restored, of the Necrons reclaiming their throne beneath the stars. The Tyranids don't just threaten that dream. They make it impossible. And for a king who gave up his soul to ensure his people's immortality, that is a failure he cannot allow. The Dolmen Gates are among the Necrons' most treasured assets. Ancient, crystalline bridges that allow them to slip through dimensions and traverse the galaxy without entering the warp. They connect the tomb worlds in a lattice of hyperspatial corridors, relics of Necron mastery over real space and its manipulation. Alongside these are the webway portals, long since stolen and repurposed from the Eldari during the Wars of Antiquity, now serving as conduits for rapid deployment and retreat. These networks form the backbone of Necron mobility, strategy, and survival, and they are slowly, silently being severed by the Tyranids. To the Imperium or even the Eldari, a Tyranid invasion is a disaster. Catastrophic, yes, but often localized. But Sarek has begun to see the larger pattern. The Hive Mind is not attacking randomly. It is identifying and consuming key infrastructural nodes. It is stripping away not just defense points, but arteries. The Dolmen Gates, once thought hidden and secure, are being located and overrun. Tomb worlds tethered to the network are falling into isolation. And when that link is severed, the Necrons within are trapped, unable to mobilize, unable to communicate, and eventually, unable to survive. This is not coincidence. It is design. The Tyranids do not understand the Dolmen Gates the way the Necrons do. Not intellectually, but they sense them. Whether through subtle gravitational anomalies, psychic echoes, or some unfathomable instinct, the Hive Mind can detect their presence. And once it does, it sends specialized organisms to destroy or corrupt them. Tunnelers that collapse dimensional gateways. Psychic strains that scramble hyperspatial alignments. Biological weaponry tailored not just to kill, but to disrupt transit. The result is a slow, deliberate strangulation of Necron mobility. Sarek has long known the importance of movement. The Necrons cannot hope to win by attrition. They do not reproduce. They awaken. Every legion is irreplaceable. Every tomb world is a vault of finite potential. Their strength lies in being where they are not expected, in appearing suddenly, annihilating with precision, and vanishing. The loss of a Dolmen Gate is more than strategic. It is spiritual. It is the death of a possibility, a severing of the grand Necron tapestry. But it is not only the Dolmen Gates at risk. The Eldar Webway, still partially accessible to the Necrons through ancient, stolen pathways, is under threat. Hive Fleet Leviathan has already breached segments of the Webway, not through brute force, but through infiltration. Bioforms tailored to resist the arcane laws of that impossible space now slither through corridors once thought inviolable. Tyranids in the Webway, it was once a laughable concept. Now, it is a nightmare reality. And with each passage they corrupt, they do not simply take territory. They poison it. Spores that bloom into dimensional cancers. Digestive acids that destabilize corridor integrity. Psychic screams that ripple through the folds of unreality. Webway segments once safe for Necron traversal now pulse with Tyranid interference. What once was a backdoor to anywhere in the galaxy is becoming a trap. Sarek has ordered tomb worlds to seal their gates. Entire sectors have gone dark, not because they are lost, but because their connections must be severed before the infection spreads. Imagine that. A civilization that has already buried itself to avoid extinction, now burying itself deeper to avoid a second death. It is not war. It is quarantine. And it gets worse. The Necrons cannot rebuild the Dolmen network. The cryptechs who designed it are long deactivated or slain. The secrets of its function are interred in dead mines. Every loss is permanent. The Tyranids are not merely winning battles, they are erasing the pathways of empire. This is not conquest, it is starvation. For Sarek, this is a profound horror. He does not simply see his empire under siege, he sees it being unmade in reverse, not with fire, but with silence. The Tyranids are collapsing the skeleton of galactic civilization. Where chaos distorts and reconfigures, the Tyranids remove. A world overrun by demons might one day be reclaimed. A world stripped by Tyranids no longer exists. And the roads that led there become roads to nowhere. The Silent King does not need prophecy to understand the implications. The Tyranids are not only killing the present, they are severing the future. They are reducing the galaxy from a complex web of possibilities to a flat, silent grave. Every dolmen gate that falls is a future that dies. Every webway corridor consumed is a tomorrow that can no longer be reached. And that, more than the battles and the biomass, is what terrifies Zurich. The Tyranids are not simply an enemy, they are a deletion protocol. They are removing the scaffolding of thought, of history, of movement, of memory. If left unchecked, the Necron race, ancient, eternal, once unkillable, will not be defeated. It will be stranded, forever. The Necrons do not dream, but Sarek does. Not in the mortal sense, not visions born of sleep or psychic flickers, but in cold, calculated simulations. Endless projections of possible futures, each run through the crystalline lattice of his consciousness, each twisted by the variables he cannot control. And in nearly all of them, the Tyranids win. Not with fire or thunder, not with mass extinction or apocalyptic war, but with slow, patient consumption. A creeping certainty, a hunger that learns. The Silent King sees the end not as a crescendo but as a fading note swallowed by silence. To the Imperium, the Tyranids are a terrifying mystery. To the Eldari, an abomination. To the Orcs, a good fight. But to the Silent King, they are a theorem, a proof of galactic doom. He has run the equations. They do not add up to survival. He has simulated every alliance, every victory, every devastating weapon, and they only delay by decades, centuries if lucky, but never prevent. Because this is not a war of conquest. It is a war of entropy. The Tyranids don't leave scarred veterans or burning cities. They leave nothing. No bones, no monuments, no myths, just stripped stone and cracked crust. The galaxy in the Silent King's simulations doesn't explode, it empties. Every vibrant world reduced to nutrient slurry. Every civilization devoured until even memory becomes meaningless. A void so complete it can no longer be called dead, only absent. He sees it all with clarity that borders on divine. The final tomb world falling to tendrils, the last dolmen gate sparking into collapse, the last Necron lord surrounded, flensing gaunts with Gauss fire until they overrun him, the final whisper of resistance drowned in chitin and acid. It is not that Sarek is without hope, he is without illusion, and that is far worse. The Silent King has made decisions that shattered empires. He betrayed gods. He exiled himself to ensure a future for his people. He endured the void. But now, even as he returns with legions and knowledge and resolve, he finds the enemy is not waiting to fight him. It is already moving past him. While he plans and plots and perfects, the Hive Mind feeds. Every second he spends preparing is a second it spends growing. He is playing against an opponent that has no ego, no pride, no need to win. Only to feed. And perhaps most haunting of all, the Hive Mind cannot be punished. The Satan could be shattered, chaos can be banished, mortals can be dominated. But the Tyranids are beyond that. They do not care if they lose battles. They do not rage or retreat in sorrow. They simply reconfigure. Every defeat is just another data point. They are not fighting to conquer. They are optimizing consumption. Sarek knows this is not just a war for territory. It is a war for possibility. If the Tyranids continue, the future will become narrower and narrower until nothing remains but hunger. A galaxy with no art, no language, no empire. Only instinct and digestion. In the farthest reaches of space, in the darkest corners of his mind, he has even dared to simulate a final victory. Not for the Necrons, but for the Hive Mind, and it is horrifying. A galaxy of perfect biomass farms, planets repurposed as hatcheries, stars stripped of their systems for gravitational fuel. No rebellion, no resistance, just the endless cycle of feeding. It is this vision that fuels the Silent King's desperation. Not loud, not panicked, but cold and absolute. He does not speak of it to his lesser pharaons. He does not show them the simulations. But every decision he makes now is guided by this spectral future. A death not in flame, but in silence. A future where even the ancient memories of a once great race are broken down into amino acids. So he acts. Not because he believes in victory, but because he believes in stalling the inevitable. Every Tyranid killed is a moment bought. Every fleet delayed is a breath stolen from extinction. He allies with the impure. He cooperates with the young. He abandons tomb worlds he once swore to preserve. Because he knows what is at stake. Not supremacy. Continuity. If Sarek dreads chaos, it is because it is maddening. If he dreads the Tan, it is because they are cruel. But he dreads the Tyranids because they are final. They are the full stop at the end of the galactic sentence. And he, the last king of a deathless race, will not go quietly into the dark. Not yet. In the grim expanse of galactic history, few figures command the same haunted gravitas as Sharek, the Silent King. He is not merely a ruler, he is a survivor of cosmic betrayals, a witness to the death of gods, and the bearer of a decision that traded one damnation for another. Yet for all the horror he has unleashed, for all the tomb worlds he has raised, and all the voices he has silenced, there is still within him a core of purpose. A belief that the Necrons might one day reclaim what was lost. Not their souls, perhaps, but their place, their order, their eternity. The Tyranids are the end of that dream. Sarek once believed the galaxy would heal from its scars, that chaos, for all its insanity, would burn itself out in time, that the younger races would destroy each other, that the stars would cool into a quiet age where the Necrons could rise again, unchallenged. But now, as he watches the Hive fleets cut swaths through entire sectors, he understands this is not a phase. It is not a cycle. The Tyranids are not here to participate in history. They are here to end it. The final war is not dramatic. It does not begin with a scream. It begins with silence, a signal that goes unanswered, a patrol that doesn't return, a tomb world that fails to check in. And then the data begins to stream in, biomass levels dropping across hundreds of systems, astrological anomalies consistent with Hive fleet dispersal, Gauss signatures overwhelmed, reanimation cohorts extinguished without trace. Not a war, a consumption. In the deepest halls of his command complex, the Silent King watches it all unfold, not in terror, but in numbness. The Tyranids do not send champions or issue threats. They do not raise banners, they do not taunt, they simply come, over and over, and each time they are different. Stronger, faster, smarter. A perfect enemy, not because they are evil, but because they are empty of everything but purpose. This is why Sarek does the unthinkable. He reaches out, not to conquer, but to plead, silently, coldly, strategically. To the Imperium he offers intelligence, to the Eldari, pathways, to the Tau, grim advice. He does not trust them, he does not even respect them, but he needs them, because alone even the Necrons will fall, even eternity can be devoured. This, then, is the final war. Not because it is the bloodiest or the grandest, but because it is the last one that matters. If it is lost, there will be no more wars, no more memories, no more stars. The galaxy will be empty, not through cataclysm but digestion. That is what Sarek sees when he stares into the void. Not death, but deletion. And it is this vision that fuels his last stand. Not a battle of glory, but a campaign of delay. He does not dream of victory, he dreams of survival. He hopes that if the galaxy can hold the line long enough, something might change. A weakness might be found. A miracle might occur. He no longer believes in salvation, but he believes in time. And he will buy it, one dead Tyranid at a time. He watches his dynasties bleed, he watches his greatest constructs torn apart, he listens as tomb worlds scream their final signals into the dark, and still, he does not relent. Because the alternative is worse, the alternative is silence. So Sarek, last king of a soulless empire, fights a war not for conquest or vengeance, but for a flicker of continuity in a galaxy teetering on the edge of nullification. He stands not as a tyrant, but as a monument, a warning, a final defiance. The gods of the warp may shriek and burn, the stars may die, but as long as he endures, there will be resistance. Because even now, especially now, Sarek remembers what it means to fear, and in that fear he finds clarity. He fights not because he will win. He fights because if he stops, the galaxy ends. There is a place beneath the crust of Sarek, deeper even than the tomb vaults where pharaohs slumber and cryptex whisper to the stars. It is called the Echo Chamber. Not because of what it holds, but because of what it does not. Here, the Silent King retreats when the weight of command becomes unbearable. Not to find comfort, but to listen, to silence. True silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of life. It is in this hollow, vast, and utterly inert that Sarek contemplates the thing that has become his deepest obsession. Not the Tyranids themselves, but the possibility they represent. He has come to believe that the Tyranids are not a fluke, not an accident of some foreign galaxy's biological arms race. They are not natural. They are not born of stars and struggle, as all other life seems to be. Sarek now suspects they are an answer to a question the Necrons themselves may have asked long ago. Perhaps during the war in heaven, when the galaxy burned and the Cetan waged reality-splitting slaughter, something out there noticed, watched, calculated, and began crafting a countermeasure. That is the shape of the dread that has taken hold in the Silent King's mind. What if the Tyranids are not just an alien life form, but a cosmic response? Not intelligent in the way mortals understand, but purposeful on a scale so vast and so cold it mimics divinity. What if some unknowable logic in the deep structure of the universe, having observed what the Necrons became, soulless, eternal, sterile, decided that such a fate could not be allowed to endure? What if the Tyranids are a kind of antibody, released into the void to purge what should not be? It is not a theory he shares with his court, not even with his Triarch Praetorians. It is too dangerous. Not because it would break morale, but because it might be true. In the ancient philosophies of the Necron, there was a concept, Ikrithva, the spiral wound, a condition of the cosmos in which a civilization, no matter how advanced, grows so distant from its origin that it loops back into destruction. A race that escapes death, but in doing so becomes death. Sarek now wonders if the Necrons have reached that spiral. If the galaxy, in some ancient cosmic way, is correcting itself. Because that is what the Tyranids are they not? A correction. They do not hate the Necrons. They do not fear them. They are not moved by history or crime or justice. They simply respond, consume, adapt, move on. Sarek is not afraid of their teeth or their numbers. He is afraid that they are necessary. This is the thought that makes his limbs tremble. Not with fear, but with the mechanical echo of emotion long suppressed. What if the Tyranids are right? What if the galaxy is better without memory? He would never say it aloud. To do so would be treason against his own existence. But the doubt festers, because for all their atrocities, the Tyranids are clean, unburdened. They do not carry guilt. They do not build monuments to past mistakes. They do not linger in what they used to be. They simply are. And Sarek, the last king of a race that forgot how to live, sees in them not a monster, but a solution. A horrifying, beautiful solution. He has seen two worlds fall and, in the strange cold aftermath, felt something akin to peace. Not triumph, not even defeat, just quiet, the quiet of finality. A silence deeper than the echo chamber. No reactivation protocols, no internal monologues, no simulated dreams of restoration, just nothing. It's tempting. And that is what shakes him more than anything. Not the fear of death, for he no longer truly possesses life, but the fear that the Tyranids offer a kind of mercy, a galactic euthanasia. A cleansing of the great error that is sentient suffering. A balm for a universe that bleeds too loudly. What if, in exterminating the Necrons, the Tyranids are doing what Sarek himself tried and failed to do? End the agony? This is the secret weight behind his strategies. Not just the desire to survive, but the desperate need to prove the Tyranids wrong. To show that memory has value. That history is not a wound, but a foundation. That sentience, in all its cruelty, deserves to persist. If he cannot prove that, then perhaps he deserves to be devoured. Perhaps they all do. In that way, the war becomes personal, not between armies, between ideas. The Hive Mind represents an answer Sarek cannot accept, because to do so would unravel everything he has ever done. Every tomb awakened, every world reclaimed, every scar endured. The Necron Empire may be broken, but it must mean something. If it does not, then all Sarek has done is delay an ending he was too proud to accept. So he fights, not because he is certain of victory, not because he believes the Necrons can prevail, but because somewhere deep in his core there remains a spark, not of hope, but defiance. A refusal to accept that oblivion is the correct shape of the future. A rage not at the Tyranids, but at the universe itself, for even allowing such a force to exist. He stands in the echo chamber for hours, unmoving, not calculating, not commanding, just listening. Listening to the silence he has vowed to defy, for in that silence there is no pain, and that is the most dangerous temptation of all. If this journey into the mind of the Silent King and the existential terror of the Tyranids gripped you as it did us, subscribe for more fan-driven deep dives into the darkest corners of the 41st millennium. This is only one thread in the endless tapestry of Warhammer lore. Let's keep weaving it together.